Well, happy Saturday afternoon to you. It's a glorious Saturday afternoon in July. 24 degrees on the way down here and a glorious sunny day. Feeling a bit down today, so I've got myself out to hopefully do a wild camp, but at the very least a hike. After my exploits on the Welsh mountains and hiking on the summit a few weeks ago, I've been suffering a little bit with what I think is ITB problems. So my knee hasn't really been up to doing very much. So unfortunately I had to miss a bike ride with the boys this morning, which is very disappointing. But I've got one walking pole to support that side of my body, and I'm doing a short hike today that's going to be anything between about 3 and 10 miles depending on how I get on, to hopefully do a wild camp. I'm walking along the tidal part of the Stour River in Kent. It runs between Plucks Gutter and Sandwich, where it discharges into the sea. Even though I'm back in Kent again, you can still hear the skylarks. Not quite as plentiful, not quite as vocal as they were in Wales. It's still very nice to hear them again. And the rustle of the bulrushes at the side of the river. Some way behind me, the Stour starts as a beautifully clear chalk stream running through Kent. It's apparently one of the few chalk streams there are in the world, and it's absolutely beautiful further back. There's places like a Wickham where you can wild swim in it. As you get down towards Grove Ferry and Plucks Gutter down here though, it is tidal, so it is saline, and it does get stirred up with an awful lot of silt. It's lost its clarity. I don't think it'll be too pleasant to be going for a swim in today, but further back most certainly is worthwhile. This area is called Stod Marsh. Stod is an ancient English word for stud. So at some point in the past there was a horse stud on this marsh, so it's called Stod Marsh. Now the area, although it's a marsh, isn't a marsh the way you think of a wetlands, but it is very unstable ground, and there are no roads through here. There's just the River Stour and a number of footpaths. So while I'm here on this hike, I'm taking the opportunity to nab 6 elusive VeloViewer tiles in this area that don't have any roads in them. So by a couple of detours along this path, I can nab all 6 of the tiles that are nestled in a big sea of blue ones I've already got. It's one of the benefits of walking. You can get places you can't get on the bike. This is one of those little detours to try and nab the tiles. Unfortunately, the footpath doesn't look very well worn, so I'm having to guess where it is. For those of you that have never been introduced with the delights of VeloViewer tiles, they're developed by a British chap who's a very keen cyclist, and he produces a piece of software that analyses all sorts of gubbins about your statistics for cycling, walking, hiking, running, etc. And he has divided the whole planet into approximately 1 mile squares. And if you undertake an activity which goes into one of those squares, you've nabbed it and it turns blue. And there's fierce competition amongst nerds and very athletic people to try and get the maximum number of tiles, but more importantly, the maximum number of contiguous tiles. So tiles that all join together, and you try to get the largest square, and it is surprisingly difficult. Getting a square 20 miles by 20 miles is a feat in itself, and it's really quite difficult. Some of the people have the most enormous squares, but it's a fabulous way of driving yourself to go places that you've not been before. It's a great way for me when I'm walking or cycling to select a route that doesn't go along the path I always take, goes a different way, try and add some other tiles. Now, living in the southeast of England, in Kent, I'm bounded by water on 3 sides, so I'm limited how far I can go north, east and south. So I'm just trying to nab all of the tiles of Kent. Still got quite some way to go, but at least this will be another 6 today. It's rather peculiar. There's a random bit of wall stuck in the middle of nowhere. There's the wall. Nothing else as far as you can see in any direction. Nice bit of wall though. This walk couldn't be more different to the walks I had in Wales a couple of weeks ago. Still devoid of people, I'm just not seeing people. But here, as you can see, there's no mountains, there's no foothills, there's no heathland. Everything is just marsh. It's just very, very samey. But also, there are no animals. There are no sheep, there are no cows. There are butterflies and moths and the chiffchaffs and the skylarks, but there aren't even many other birds. It's really quite peculiar how quiet and peaceful it is out here, and how devoid of any other living thing it is. It's a little bit disturbing, to be honest. I spoke too soon about the lack of animals. Now come across a flock of cows. Half of them are laying down, half of them are standing. So they're obviously not too sure about what the weather's going to do. And there's some calves. Oh, look at those. Aren't they beautiful? Now I've reached one of my potential spots, just near the river, but it's slightly more secluded than most areas around here. That it's got a little corner bounded by some shrubs. Just here. There's a nice flat area. It's in the next field from the cows, so not too concerned about that. Definite possibility. The only thing is, got an easterly wind, and the eastern side, northeastern side, is the side that's open, so the wind does whistle into the corner here. So I'm going to walk on a little bit further, check out some other potential spots. That railway bridge is about 7.5k in, so it's actually about a third of the way if I'm going to go all the way round. But as my knee and hip are starting to play up a little bit, I think that this is going to be my furthest point. I'm going to start heading back and go for a camp spot that I saw on the way across. Don't think I've got another 15k in me at the moment, which is sad. Well, 10k in. I've chosen my spot just behind me there, between the two trees. It's nicely shielded from the wind, It's right by the side of the river, and it's in a field with no livestock, which is very good. Very peaceful. You can hear an aeroplane in the background, but other than that, it's all bird song. Hopefully it'll be a nice peaceful spot. Set up my tent there, and just nearly had a disaster. Sent the drone up and flew it straight into that tree, and it was out of that branch over the water. Fortunately, it stopped in the tree and didn't fall in the water, so I retrieved it. You can actually see it sitting in there, still turned on, actually still recording. What I've done is I've tied my camp chair, really pleased I bought it, onto a 8-foot bit of wood I found using one of my guy lines off of the tent. So reached it out under the tree, shook the tree, and fortunately it fell out into my chair, and I've managed to retrieve it. Otherwise that could have been quite an expensive trip out. All's well that ends well. So it's now around 8:30. I've had my delightful sausage casserole for my supper, retrieved the drone, and there is the Lanshan2 pitched right on the bank, only about 3 or 4 feet from the side of the Stour River in Kent. Quite pleased with that Lanshan pitch actually. It's quite a taut pitch for a change. No sagginess there. Pleased about that. The sun's on its way down now. Got less than an hour before it sets. Should have quite a nice sunset over there. The river in the foreground. Shadows getting very long. And the wind's died down as well, so I found this pitch on the leeward side of these trees, but the wind's died down, so I needn't have bothered. But it is still a lovely spot. I do love the way that the sun dapples shade and brightness on and through the tents, so you can actually see parts of the tents glowing with the sun behind it. Very pretty. Lovely spot. Cheers. For supper I had a Wayfarer meal, one of the non-dehydrated ones, and I've always said there's no point in getting dehydrated meals, you only have to carry the water to rehydrate them. In warming this one up, reading the instructions, it says to warm it up for 7 to 8 minutes and then discard the water. So you've wasted the 500 mils of water that you used to boil it. So I didn't. I used the water for my noodles. So hopefully there's nothing particularly noxious or poisonous in the printing on the Wayfarer meals bags. As if it's leached out into the water, then I've now eaten that with my noodles. So the sun is about to set on a beautiful July day with me wild camping, and worryingly I just thought this is my 13th wild camp. Maybe that's why I nearly lost the drone. Hopefully that's all that's going to go wrong. So wild camper's beer of choice, Brewdog Elvis juice. I'll open it and toast the sunset. Cheers to you all. Happy July. While my coffee's brewing,
I'll give the tent a little bit of a wipe down. There's an awful lot of dew around this morning. It's not quite in the sunshine yet, so this should expedite the drying of it by wiping it down. Using a sponge cloth. Had a really quiet night, apart from a boat went past at 7 minutes past 12, and it was all illuminated, making a hell of a racket, and I thought it was a combine harvester or something coming. Really did quite scare me. It woke up with a start, try and work out what on earth was going on. It was only a boat, so it was fine. And what do we say before we walk away? Leave no trace. This was my spot. And now, heading that way, towards those fir trees. If you remember yesterday, I got to the railway bridge about 7.5k. That was a third way round the full loop. Following that, if I'd carried on, I had about another 4k through an industrial area, past the power station, some car plants and all sorts of industry, so it wouldn't have been so pleasant. However, along that stretch of the river there is an abandoned World War II military prison that's covered in graffiti that I wouldn't have mind seeing, and there's also a Roman fort. It's been closed since COVID and I don't think it's open now, but I did wonder whether I may be able to get in there and camp there. So that would have been about 11k into the walk. Then the last 8k or so back to the car would have been along predominantly roads and away from the river, so I have to cut back across inland. So I think my choice to come back to this spot and camp here was definitely the right one, because it was a very pleasant night and didn't overly stress my leg. And yeah, so pleased that I did turn round at the bridge and come back. After a year of wild camping, made myself a little list of the main points that I've learnt from it. One of them is mountain weather forecast. Always look at mountain weather forecast. Don't rely on the standard forecast unless you're somewhere like I am today at sea level. Number two, don't pitch on a slope. You can pitch on undulating ground, bumpy ground, but don't pitch on a slope. If you pitch on a slope, you're going to end up rolled to that side of your tent. So if you have to pitch on a slope, make sure that your feet down. The next one could be contentious. You don't need expensive gear. You don't need the best gear. However, the best gear does make you more comfortable, does tend to make camping easier, and definitely eliminates your equipment as a point of failure. You may still fail, as I did at Rostirrion, but at least if you've got faith in your equipment, you know that that isn't going to let you down. So you don't need it, but it is a good idea to invest in good equipment. Next one, don't be fussy about your pitch. You won't always find the perfect pitch. It's surprising where you can pitch a tent. Right on a public footpath, on the very top of a hill where there's just a tiny flat area, Just choose the pitch up and do it. In a similar vein, when you're at home thinking about going wild camping, just do it. The only wrong decision is not to make the decision to go out. If you always go out when you think about it, you'll rarely, if ever, be disappointed. If you don't go, you're often disappointed. Never underestimate the therapeutic properties of a brew up. If you're ever feeling down, if you're ever trying to find a spot and just can't seem to find it, stop, get the stove out, have a brew up. It's amazing how much better you feel after it. Pack heavy for a comfortable night, or pack light for a comfortable hike. You choose which, and then you live with it. Don't chase lightness just for the sake of being light and uncomfortable. Arrive late and leave early, and try not to draw attention to yourself. Always bring a rubbish bag with you. Something which I neglected to do this time, so I've had to use one of my Ziploc bags as a rubbish bag. Bring rubbish bags. One of the problems with the demise of the supermarket carrier bag. Leave no trace. Leave no trace that you were ever there, apart from maybe some flattened grass. To me, leave no trace means leaving no trace while you're there and being stealthy. And I really don't understand people who use brightly coloured tents, adorn their tents with lights, play music and have fires. That is not, to me, the leave no trace philosophy. That means that other people can see you, know that you're there. You're leaving a visual or oral trace. The last one, and the most important one, is wherever you go, whatever you do, and wherever you are, enjoy it. Because that's what this is all about. It's the experience of being in the outdoors, being in control of yourself and everything around you, and being able to compensate for the changeable nature of your surroundings and the weather. If you enjoy yourself, however you're doing it right, and carry on like that regardless of what anybody else says, does or advises. Just do it. A frustration of this hike though is my tile bagging didn't go quite according to plan. I checked on VeloViewer this morning and found that my hike last night, where I detoured off track to go down and try and bag the tile, I stopped what looks like about 10 meters too early. I came across a bridge over a little dike, and then probably 20 meters further on there was another bridge across another dike. I thought, should I walk onto the next bridge? No, I'm sure this bridge was the one that gets me into the tile, and it wasn't. So of the 6 tiles I should have got on this walk, I only got 5 of them. So now I need to conspire to get back to that point, which is about a kilometre and a half off of the main path, to try and grab that tile. But perhaps I won't do that today.